to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul, and my co-host Justin Baker here with me as news on the Leafs front. We have found out, as you have as well, that Mike Babcock has been terminated as the head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and Sheldon Keefe, American Hockey League coach for the Toronto Marlies, will be taking over. So Kyle Dubas' boy finally gets his shot as the head coach of the Maple Leafs, and what a lot of Leafs fans have been calling for since they lost to Boston last year in the playoffs was give Sheldon Keefe a chance. Mike Babcock, overrated is what a lot of people believe, and there may be a few Red Wings fans out there who are going, "We told you." But that is the situation that we're in right now. We actually planned on doing a Leafs deep dive before any of this happened. The news broke at about 4 p.m. or something like that? 4 p.m.
just
today.
about.
It is Wednesday. It's about 6 p.m. now. And so we're planning on doing a deep dive in the Leafs. And obviously this changes a few things. And so we'll break down everything that has to do with the Babcock firing, what to expect out of Sheldon Keefe, the changes that he may make. Obviously, some of these are speculatory at this point. The Leafs do play Thursday against the Arizona Coyotes, so we'll get our first look at what Sheldon Keefe might plan on doing. I'll give you some words. What words would you like to say?
Words. So generous of you to allow me some words here.
That's all. That's it.
Okay, I'm leaving. Yeah, you know what? It's really hard to be surprised, but then part of me is still a little shocked by this because I think when they lost to Pittsburgh 6-1, I was like, okay,
yeah,
he's got to go. I think it's time. I think he's lost the room. Maybe I think maybe the team is just sort of slipping away from him at this point, and I think maybe they were thinking of firing him at that point, but they just wanted to wait till he got a little bit closer to home. Who knows? But
but they're out in Vegas.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe they did it. Maybe they're like, guys, we're on the road. There's nobody around.
Maybe
we can just get rid of him and.
Yeah, just let him go gamble the rest of his $20 million he's got coming.
Yeah, the Leafs still owe him, by my estimation, so 6.25 per season. He's got 3 years after this year. So that's 18.75. On top of that, we're 20 games into the season. So basically 25% or 23 games or whatever. So 25%'s already been paid out. So he's still owed another $4.5 million. So he's going to get a nice... a cool $23 million over the next 3 years, and he doesn't have to do anything if he doesn't want to.
Very true.
I got to imagine he'll go coach.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, I think he'll get a coaching job pretty quick. But I mean, so Sheldon Keefe comes in, right, and he's kind of looked at as more or less like a player's coach. Would I not be wrong in saying that?
That would be correct.
Okay.
Definitely a player's coach, and definitely a guy who is willing to test things, try new things, and is very into like Dubas. Dubas was hired because he had such an extensive knowledge of advanced stats. He was willing to be innovative and use people that nobody would ever think to use. Obviously,
he wanted the money ball.
He's the first guy to hire a female scout. There's a lot of things that he's doing that are like modernizing not only just the Leafs, but probably beginning a path to modernizing the NHL as a whole. So we're starting to see it in other sports as well. I think the NFL has female referees.
Yep.
And,
Arizona's got a female coach.
So there's some changes throughout sport. Really, Dubas probably like taking the mantle for the Maple Leafs, and he is looking to do things a different way than what Babcock was doing. And Sheldon Keefe was his guy down in Sault Ste. Marie when he was the GM of Sault Ste. Marie. Keefe was the coach. And he basically brought him with him, made him the coach of the Marlies, because at one point Dubas was essentially running the Marlies when he first got there. Lou Lamoriello's there along with Mark Hunter, and they won a championship 2 years ago with a lot of these guys like Travis Dermott, Andreas Janssen. There were several. I think Kasperi Kapanen might have been. No, I don't think that he was sent down for that team. But there's a lot of guys that are on the team right now.
Yeah, Justin Hall
that played down. Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
So I gotta think a couple things are going to happen. I'm thinking of this as a not so much like the Blues last year. You know, some people are starting to say, "Oh, see, this is like the Blues fired Mike Yeo, and it was in November,
right?"
And you know, and Craig Berube takes over, and things start to. It was a slow change, but then by the time January hit, they really hit their stride. I don't think that this is the same scenario. I think this is much more like the Pittsburgh Penguins when they fired, I can't remember his name. He was a college hockey guy, Mike Johnston.
Yes.
They fired him. They bring in Mike Sullivan. And Mike Sullivan was their AHL coach. Mike Sullivan comes in and just opens things up. He changed the entire system and also brought a bunch of players up. That was Brian Rust comes up, Connor Sheary. There's a few other guys who came up with him and really turned that organization and their depth around, including like releasing Sidney Crosby to be Sidney Crosby. And of course, the rest is history. Penguins go on to win the Stanley Cup that year and again.
Boo.
And
Boo.
Yeah, I know you loved it, but I think that it's more like that. I think that Sheldon Keefe's coming up, and you got to strike while the iron's hot. Like you've got some guys in the AHL and on the roster where they've been under your tutelage for a while. And I think he's been the head coach of the Marlies for this. This was his 5th year, I believe. If I'm,
they paid him a lot of money too to stay.
To stay, yeah. For he was the highest paid coach in the American Hockey League. I think he comes in and he's going to change the usage of a lot of these guys. And I think he's also probably going to like release the hounds in a way. Like, I mean, let's be honest. You know, like, okay, the game against the Pittsburgh Penguins, it's 6-1. Like, it's fine if they're losing 6-5. I think we're having a different conversation. You know, if it when it's 6-5 or 7-6, you're losing these crazy high scoring games. I think that we go, all right, well, how can they keep those couple extras out of their net? Not how can they score? I mean, this was. I don't think that there was ever a worry about this team not being able to score. All of a sudden, this team can't play defense and they can't score.
Yeah, I think over the last 9 games, it was like 69% on the penalty kill.
They haven't had a lead in like 6 or 7 games. That's horrible.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, that's horrible.
When you look at the roster they have, the amount of talent, I mean, injuries aside, a lead, for God's sake.
I know.
You should be able to.
If Nathan Horton could just come back.
Call Joffrey Lupul. I'm sure he's free.
I mean, really, the only guy really hurt. I mean, you got Trevor Moore is injured and Mitch Marner's out. Everyone else is there. This shouldn't be a problem. And I mean, freaking Jason Spetz is scoring goals.
I know.
He's got 2 goals in his last 2 games.
Good on him.
Really, everyone else can't figure it out. I think that this is. I really think that it had to be some kind of like, we're not playing for this guy.
No, I absolutely agree.
They turned on their coach, and unfortunately for Babcock, that just was what it was. Babcock is going to need to do what Columbus's coach,
John Tortorella.
Yes, he's going to need to do what he did. Like, he needs to change.
No, absolutely. Barry Trotz did it when he went to the island, or when he went to Washington. He knows how to adjust, right? That's what great coaches can do. That's what Stanley Cup winning coaches do. And so, you know, it's funny. I was listening to XM, and they were talking about the 2014 Olympic team that he coached to the gold, right?
Like the greatest team to ever lace up skates.
One of the greatest teams ever.
Maybe outside of the 87 Canada Cup team with Lemieux and Gretzky on the same line.
That was ridiculous. Yeah, so they talk about that, and they're like, you know, for a guy who implemented this defensive system in the Olympics, nobody could score more than a goal a game against those guys, it seemed like.
Yeah.
Nobody was scoring anything, and it's like, how did he get those players to buy in where his current team he's got a lot of superstars on there, can't do it now, and it was basically like, okay, well, Sidney Crosby bought into it, they were all saying, and because Sidney did it, everybody else was like, okay, cool, I'll do it too.
Yeah.
And so maybe he's just lost the room, guys don't want to do it for him. Or maybe it's just the fact that, okay, 2 weeks is a hell of a lot different than doing it over the course of a season.
Oh, and we're not talking about one season. We're talking about all seasons.
5 seasons. But, yeah, so he lost the room, and maybe he wasn't able to adjust. You know, when the guys aren't willing to play that way, you say, okay, well, shoot, if they're not willing to play that way, let's try their style or try something else.
Yeah. I'll say this. I think Mike Babcock's still a very good coach. I think that he thrives in a position where little is expected of his team. Like maybe that team, maybe they can make the playoffs. And he just milks everything out of players that he can. The problem is you can't really do that with Matthews and Tavares. Like these guys aren't guys that you need to choke.
Right.
His coaching style is like, you think of a balloon, and then when you choke it, all the air goes to one spot and you get this big tight balloon. And so you're getting everything you can out of that one little spot. I mean, you can't last forever. And the guys that are on the fourth line, I mean, those guys, they want to be in the NHL. Okay, so of course those guys are going to plug for you, and that's fine. But when you've got your superstars, this isn't when he won the Stanley Cup with the Red Wings in 2008. Mm-hmm. That team, and that was, it was 12 years ago, almost 11 years ago. Guys are a lot different. You have to be much different with players now. Plus, when Babcock came in as a coach, he was the highest paid person on the team.
He really was.
And he is not anymore. So there are people that have maybe more influence.
More pull.
And when you're not winning, you're not winning. And it's unfortunate because really you look at this team and you go, yeah, I can see why. Like there are some holes in this team, especially defensively, especially when Tyson Barrie looks like
freaking Jonathan Ericsson right now.
He looks horrific. I mean, last night even, he just decided, I'm going to go down the middle of the ice and try to deke out the last guy out there, and he got burned, and that's why that was the game-winning goal. And it's just making bad mistakes. But I wonder if Sheldon Keefe comes in here, he's going to go freaking lax. We're so good. Just do what you do. Like I got to imagine that it's going to be a little less tight. And I don't mind losing it. Like I said, I don't mind losing games. If you're winning games, you don't mind losing games 6-5, 5-4 here and there.
Right.
Like that's fine. I mean, if you believe that Frederik Andersen is one of the best goalies in the league, that's fine. He can handle himself if he's getting some breakaways or some 2-on-1s because you're pushing so hard for offense. But at least then you're going to score.
Right. Now let me ask you this question. So the firing of Babcock, is this Dubas trying to deflect some of the blame for his inability to maybe, I don't want to say inability because he has done a pretty decent job this offseason filling out, a lot of the depth of this roster, but, the lack of success this team has had, is this like saying, okay, crap, let's can Babcock now because he's obviously lost the room. He's not.
No, he wanted
done.
to fire him in the offseason.
Okay.
That came out.
Well, sure, yeah,
in the
absolutely,
right. So at this point, I think that this was finally Shanahan saying, "Okay, you're right. This isn't working anymore." And I believe his Shanahan's quote was, "At this time, we collectively felt it was best to make a change to Sheldon Keefe." And so that he said, of course, he's saying all the right things about what Babcock did over the last 5 years and how grateful they are for what he's been able to do.
Yeah, never won a series in the playoffs. Great.
Three shots at the and let's be honest, the first year they made the playoffs, they shouldn't have made the playoffs.
No, absolutely not. But
so yeah, they lost in overtime in 3 of those games. I think it was 3 of those games. So they definitely had a shot to win that series. Same with 2 game 7s against Boston, but he clearly got outcoached.
He did, absolutely.
Clearly got outcoached in both those game 7s. So I think when you look at what Keefe has been able to do, I don't think that they had any choice. And now if the Leafs have been humming along okay, they're like the third team or the top wild card team or something, I think it would have been different. But just the way they've been losing, I think Dubas was waiting for a losing streak, and he said
this was a losing streak.
Shanahan finally went, okay, fine, like you got your guy, but now it's okay, you got your guy. Now everything's on Dubas.
It is.
From
absolutely.
this point forward, everything is on Dubas. So that to me is where I think we're going to find out what this guy's made out of. I mean, he's got all his guys signed. He has been able to go out and I think in the beginning of the season, if you said, do you think Tyson Barrie will be good for the Leafs? You say yes. Like good for probably 50 points.
99 out of 100 people would have said yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Good. I think good for at least 45, 50 points. Not a stretch in any shape. Makhayev's been a great little addition. I think there's been a lot of because of the salaries that some of these guys have, obviously we know the top 3 guys are getting paid a ridiculous amount. And so the way that he's had to maneuver has been nice. But a lot of those players just haven't panned out. And you don't really care. Like Jason Spezza, if he doesn't pan out, he's a $700,000 bury him in the minors.
Right.
Which he's actually not doing too bad right now. But it's Alex Carefoot signed to another 3 years after this, which he's been fine, but it just doesn't seem like there's much of an identity to this team. I think that may be what Sheldon Keefe can bring.
Let's hope so.
Because that AHL, the championship team from 2 seasons ago, that was their calling card was like, here's our identity. You knew what you were going to get from them. They were just this ballsy group of guys. So I think he comes in and he's going to give this team, he's going to put a stamp, and they're going to have some kind of identity. I'm really actually excited for Trevor Moore to come back. He played under Keefe, and Keefe probably really made him the player that he is today. So I think there's a lot to be excited about. Statistically speaking, even if all their players play at their career pace, the Leafs, statistically speaking, have a less than 50% chance to make the playoffs now.
Wow.
I mean, it's still 22 games in. A lot can go right for you.
Sure.
But there also is the other side. Keefe's never coached in the NHL before. So, yeah, you can be buddy-buddy with these players and unleash them. But what happens when you have to go head-to-head with a guy who's been in the league for some time? And
like a Barry Trotz.
Are you going to get out-coached on a regular basis in some different ways? Maybe.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think he's got, like you said, he's got 2 good tests coming up. You mentioned Arizona coming up this, Thursday? And then on Saturday, he's got Colorado. Granted, they don't have Rantanen or they don't have Landeskog, but they're still playing unfreaking believable right now. So those will be 2 really, really good tests from a team that, shuts you down defensively and doesn't let you score more than a goal or 2 a game. And then another team on the opposite side in Colorado that can, score and beat you 6-5 because they just, that depth. And it'll be interesting too with Nazem Kadri coming back. That'll be just fun to watch, period. So,
I forgot about that little connection.
Yeah. The Kadri Bowl. Coming to town. And so, so a couple of good tests. We'll see if he can put a stamp on this team here quickly, or if this will be more or less a situation where, you get to see what you have in the cupboards really quick if you're, Sheldon Keefe, and you can be like, okay, well, I know I got these guys that, go out and compete now. And so you kind of get an idea of what you're going to do. And, I would love to see him just be really crazy, maybe put Tavares and Matthews on the same line and just see what happens. But
yeah, I don't know if that'll happen.
It won't. But I'm just saying.
One thing of course, the Leafs brought in Paul McFarland from the Florida Panthers, and Paul McFarland and who's their assistant. They're both staying with the team. Dave Haxtell.
Okay,
they'll both remain with the team. So Keefe gets these 2 guys. He inherits a couple guys that weren't necessarily Babcock guys. At least Paul McFarland wasn't, because they fired the assistant coaches. They fired the assistant coaches that were there last season.
Yeah,
brought in these 2 guys. When you look at their special teams, I mean, their Leafs penalty kill has been atrocious. Only 4 teams have a worse penalty kill than the Leafs, 27th in the league. And their power play not really much better. I think they're 18th in the league in the power play. So they're about league average. But my thought is Sheldon Keefe comes in here and maybe makes some immediate changes to the power play. Marlies, I think, are like 3rd or 4th in the American Hockey League for power play percentage. Okay. So obviously there's a lot that's different about the American Hockey League over the NHL. I just think he's going to unleash their creativity. Like, he doesn't, Babcock was very structured. There's no reason you'd bring in another guy who you go, yeah, be equally as structured. We like that part. No.
We want the exact same thing. Yeah.
Right,
cool.
Right. I think another thing you'll see is there'll be a lot more input from players as to how they play. Like, I think there's going to be, I think this team's going to be built to play the way that Austin Matthews, John Tavares, Mitch Marner, William Nylander built the way that they want to play. And Morgan Riley, too. I think he should be tossed into that as well.
Absolutely.
Like, Morgan Riley is better when he's joining the Rush. And I think there's some strange hesitancy sometimes with him. And I wonder if it's this season in particular has been squeezing the stick a little too hard as, the more you lose and things just
right. And there was
catapulted.
I was listening to Matthew Barnaby on XM, and he was talking like they wanted to get rid of their coach, and so there were a few games towards the end where they were like, like you said, squeezing the stick a little hard, or just letting a couple guys skate a little bit quicker on purpose. And so, maybe that's what we've had in Toronto. Some guys are just sick of it, and so maybe they're not playing as hard, or they're not back checking as much as maybe they would normally do on a regular basis. So hopefully things will change for them. I think, they still got great pieces in there. You still look at this roster, you still look at the talent they have, and there's no reason to think they can't turn it around quickly.
Do you think that time on ice is about to change? Do you think that, like right now, Austin Matthews sits at just under 20 minutes a game, 1950? I think that's about right. John Tavares, 18:26. Nylander, 18 minutes. Do you think that some of these guys, rather than, when you look at guys on the fourth line, they're still getting, Jason Spezza is still getting 11, 20 a game. Nick Patan, 11 minutes a game. Frederic Gauthier, basically 11 minutes a game. Like, do you think that some of these minutes lessen for that fourth line and maybe increase for the top? Like, you're going to miss the playoffs and you're only going to play Tavares 18 minutes a game?
Right. Not going to happen. Yeah, I do think we're going to see a big change in the amount of time on ice a lot of these players get. And I think one of them, for example, for me is I think really quick you're going to see Tyson Barrie's time, I think, increase a lot. He's sitting right now at 21 minutes, which is pretty on par for a second-line guy, but I think he's probably going to be more of a 25-minute guy because one big area of his game that has gone down in terms of time on ice has been on the power play, right? In Colorado, he was that top power play unit specialist. He was out there all the time, and that's how he was, able to accumulate a lot of points he got last year and many of his seasons in Colorado for that matter. And I think, with Morgan Riley being the top guy in Toronto, I think you're going to see a shift where you might see Morgan Riley or Tyson Barrie see a lot more time with maybe Morgan Riley.
I think you got to get Cody Ceci out of there.
Absolutely.
Dude, yeah. As bad as Tyson Barrie looks, Cody Ceci, the guy's just a heart attack waiting to happen. Like, he has no idea what to do with the puck. He looks dumbfounded most of the time. Sometimes you look at a guy's facial expression on the bench, and it just tells you everything. Like, what needs to happen with that guy? He was brought in from Ottawa, and remember, in Ottawa, he was the guy that everyone wanted to get rid of because he made all these stupid mistakes. Same thing. I don't know what you really expect. You put the guy in the exact same situation.
Well, no, he was expected to be like another superstar defenseman behind Erik Karlsson in Ottawa. It didn't really
right.
It didn't pan out, but it was the same thing. He was making stupid mistakes, so they were like, "Crap, what do we do with this guy?" And they kept trying to make it work with Cody Ceci, and it never panned out. And so, he eventually comes to Toronto, and he hasn't changed. The player that he was in Ottawa is still the same guy he is in Toronto. It's just that now he's got a little bit more talent in front of him to try to maybe mask some of those mistakes. But it's just he's playing top line minutes right now, and it's hard to mask those when you're out there for 24 minutes a game.
He's playing 22 minutes a game. He's playing more than Tyson Barrie.
Right. More than Jake Muzzin.
Not too much of a difference. We're talking basically an extra shift a game. I just think it's obvious. Cody Ceci is nothing more like he's probably a guy who should be on the third pairing. In a real world. Now maybe the second pairing. But it should be that second pairing where he's getting 19, 20 minutes a game.
Penalty kill time.
Like Morgan Riley should be getting 27 minutes a game. Why not?
Yeah.
Especially now.
Ryan Suter.
Now that you're far out, you need to start winning. So you might as well win on the back of your horses.
Right.
Like if they go down, then that is what it is. But
give some of the younger guys like Travis Dermott a little bit more time. See if they can't really show up and produce. Because like you said, Cody Ceci's not doing it.
He's making quite a few mistakes. Now when you look at his advanced stats, even strength wise, his Corsi 4 is 52.2. It actually is the highest of his entire career. And his PDO though is 102.2. So that's outrageous. I mean, he's getting incredible goaltending, and the on ice shooting percentage when he's on the ice, even strength, is 11.3%. That's
wow,
astronomically higher than the average. So he's also on top of what the mistakes that he's made. He's getting insanely lucky. So things could be worse.
They could be worse.
Things could be worse for Cody Ceci. Like, it's just time. Take him away from the pressure of having to play against other teams' top players. That's the problem. Is that, of course, who are you putting out there? Morgan Riley. You want Morgan Riley out there against a team's other top players. So Cody Ceci has to go with him. But if you just put him on that third pairing or mix it, second pairing, third pairing, you maybe are able to shield him a little bit, shelter him. Then maybe he can succeed because he's playing against people that aren't the best players on the team.
Right. Now, question, are we going to potentially see some moves here in terms of, and not necessarily trades, but I'm talking call-ups with guys maybe like Timothy Liljegren, guys who, maybe the coach is familiar with a little bit more in the Marley system, and say, hey, let's bring you up. Let's see what you can do.
Yeah, that's a great thought. I think that goes along with what I was talking about with Pittsburgh, bringing in Mike Sullivan.
Right.
I think we're about to see who Sheldon Keefe's boys are. Now, they just called up Pierre Engvall, who his first game was that Vegas Golden Knights game. But for the Marlies, he had 16 points in 15 games. It's the reason that he was called up. He had 32 points in 70 games last year, and already 16 through the first 15. So a nice little start for Pierre Engvall, 6'5". He's a monster out there on the wing. But I wonder if he was brought up. Like, obviously, I don't know if they went into that Golden Knights game knowing, like, we're gonna fire him. Like, it's inevitable. So they brought up Pierre Engvall ahead of the fact.
Ahead of schedule.
They needed to bring up somebody anyways, and so they bring up a guy like Sheldon who should go up. And he said, bring this guy up. Mm-hmm. Knowing he's probably going to be up there soon anyways.
And you talk about it too. At 6'5", that's one thing that Toronto's always missed is little grit. So
yep.
Start bringing those boys up.
They need the tall, like, big guys, but you need guys that can skate too. But they've got lots of those. So yeah, I wonder, does Sandin has got to be the first guy I'm thinking. Like, Rasmus Sandin is going to come up. I think he's going to get called up within the first, like, give Keefe a second to get his bearings. Mm-hmm. Sandin comes up, and Sandin immediately takes Ceci's spot and knocks Ceci down to the third pairing. Give Sandin, like, throw him to the Wolves and let's see what the guy can do. I mean, the guy in the preseason played like 28 minutes that one game. He can play. He'll be fine. You could also maybe make
he's
the case
looking real good for the Marlies right now too. 9 points in 9 games. So
yeah. Yep, and you could make the case for Timothy Liljegren. I think that they want to keep him down there, but him also 8 points in the first 13 games. I think that Sandin is maybe more NHL ready, but I mean, you've got a lot of guys up on this team that maybe don't. It's not that they don't deserve to be there, but you've got a lot of randoms. Like, I think you've got a lot of guys. You can Martin Marincin, Justin Hall. I think you can move guys around. So we'll see who ends up coming up. I'm predicting Sandin comes up and he will take a spot on the top 4.
Okay.
Within the next 2 or 3 weeks, he'll be called up.
Interesting. Yeah, and that's more than feasible too, because just their cap situation again. I think you can put a guy on waivers, or you can just send a guy down anyways, and you can easily swap him in and out, right? And it doesn't hurt your cap situation. Now, speaking of cap, the one area I worry about is their backup goaltending situation.
Well, I'll say this: backup goaltending wise. He was, they were like in a 1A 1B kind of situation with the Marlies with Casimir.
Yeah, just go Casimir.
Kaskasuo. I know his name's pronounced weird. I can't remember how.
Yeah.
But anyways, so he played great with the Marlies, and I'm wondering if Keefe comes up. He knows how this guy likes to play. He's been there, for a couple years. He's been there since 15, 16. So as long as Sheldon Keefe is with the Marlies, so was Casimir.
Casimir, yeah. And he's 26, so he should be getting into form.
Yep.
And if you think you can get something out of him, now's the time to find out.
Yep. I agree, and I think that he will continue to get an opportunity. You're not gonna write him off for that one game against the Penguins because that was a joke. Like
the team played.
It's almost insulting to that guy. You really you can't get up for a game. It's this guy's first NHL game, and you're going to do that.
Right?
You're going to play like that. It's crap. So I think there's a chance that maybe he is the system that Keefe plays. He's so comfortable with it. I mean, as a goaltender, if you know where guys are going to be, I mean, you know how much easier it is to play.
Oh, absolutely.
When you know who's in front of you, and
I felt way more comfortable when you were on the ice. I mean, let's be honest. I was like, okay, sweet. I know he'll back check. I know he's going to be covering his own end. He's not going to try to rush up and leave me hanging. So
in beer league, if you know you have a guy who's not going to leave you, forget you, bro.
Yeah, for real. Yeah. No knock on Modi, but man, he just, if he left the defensive zone, just forget about it. The puck was coming back the other way, and he wasn't coming back.
Oh man, Modi gets the shout out.
Love Modi
in the bad, in the worst way.
Love you, bro.
So I want to swing over to the Babcock side. Do you think Babcock coaches somewhere else this season?
This season, no. I don't think so.
Think he's going to take the breather.
Yeah, I think he needs a breather. I think he needs to really reassess, hey, do I need to change what I'm doing? And I think, if he gets thrown in somewhere, he's going to be expected to win and win quick.
Yeah.
And so I think if he takes the time and he really, just focuses and readjusts his coaching strategy, maybe just, tweaks it a bit here and there, he could find success in another system somewhere.
Mike Babcock, World Championships head coach for Canada.
Ooh, interesting.
He'll go there. There's a chance maybe Sidney Crosby's over there. There's going to be some good some good players
right
that end up there, and he'll kind of find his people will go, oh yeah, Babcock. Oh, he is a really good coach, and he'll do great over there. And then someone will it'll entice someone enough. He also, something I was thinking of. All right, for the next 3 years, he's getting paid $6.25 million by the Leafs. So there's nothing stopping him from going to a smaller market team and saying, I'm willing to, I'll take a pay cut.
Yeah, I'll take $2 million here.
Give me $2 million.
Yeah.
I'm getting my $6 over here. And a team that maybe wouldn't normally be able to afford Mike Babcock can afford him. Either that or he goes, no, I'm going somewhere. I'm getting $8.
Right. He could do that. Yeah. I want Joe Quenneville money.
I don't know. Could he though? He really hasn't done anything.
No, and I completely agree. He just hasn't done anything since Detroit. And I mean, look,
now see what he did with the Leafs in the beginning. They finished last place the 1 year, but that wasn't his fault. That was because they sold the farm.
Sure.
But the year that they made the playoffs went against Washington, they had no business being in the playoffs. He milked that team for everything they were worth, and he got them to the playoffs. I think he that was his best coaching performance in Toronto.
Okay.
Even the following year. You're talking Matthews rookie in second year, Marner's rookie second year. Like he got those guys playing a certain way, and that's fine. I think he taught them a lot about how to play, and he milked a lot of guys. Gave Frederik Andersen. I don't, as much as Frederik Andersen, I'm sure would say he did it on his own. I mean, the fact that Babcock trusted him so much, put him in there so often, he definitely put him in the limelight, and I think we all know how good he is because of what Babcock did for him. So I think there's a lot of good that he did, but it was once the team, he had been there too long. I think he's just kind of a guy with an expiration date.
Yeah. Can you guess who the longest tenured coach is in the NHL right now?
Longest tenured coach. Am I going to be surprised?
I think it is kind of a shocker of a name, but guy who probably has gotten the let's fire this guy chant a few times from fans, but
I'm gonna say John Cooper of the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah, and probably maybe a place that I think he could, Babcock could end up. Maybe the second longest tenure coach is the Paul Maurice.
Wow, Winnipeg. I don't think Mike Babcock would want to go to Winnipeg.
You don't think so? Maybe a place like Minnesota with Bruce Boudreau if he's on the hot seat.
His family lives here in Detroit.
That's
a
true.
lot of them. other, like his daughter just graduated from Michigan, and his some of his other family's near Toronto. Like I don't think he'd want to go super far, but
Okay, so Minnesota maybe, Columbus if Torch doesn't stay there for too long.
yeah, I don't know if I see Babcock taking a job like Columbus.
Okay,
I don't know where Babcock will end up, but I think that there's a strong chance he coaches Canada in the World Championships. I think there's also a chance that maybe he just takes the next year and a half, just enjoys his life, because he took that Toronto job, and I remember him saying, "I've already done everything in Detroit.
right.
Like I've won a Stanley Cup. Like I've done a lot of things, but no one's won the cup in Toronto for a really
Long time, yeah.
And I think that was the dream. So now
he won't get to do that.
You have to almost okay, the dream's gone. Now sometimes it takes somebody a minute to figure out what their next step is, but we'll see. Money talks.
Certainly.
Money talks. Okay, Leafs sit 9-10, 9-10 and something, 9-10 and 4 or something. Do the Leafs make the playoffs?
Boy, that is a tough question. I got to say yes. I mean, I know they've got a lot ahead of them in terms of just, they gotta get it going, and they gotta get it going quick. They're sitting in 10th, so they're not too far out. They're only a couple points out of a wild card spot.
Only played 5 more games than Tampa Bay.
Right.
Tampa Bay's 2 points behind them.
Right. Tampa Bay will get back up there too. But, I mean, you look at teams like, for instance, Montreal, right? I do think they have a strong chance of making the playoffs too. But, we talked about stats for a team, right? Toronto sitting down there in terms of penalty kill. Montreal is the worst penalty kill team in the league, but for some reason they keep winning. They keep having success. I don't know if they can sustain that type of success. I think maybe some other teams too, like Buffalo. They're starting to come back down to earth. They're doing the exact same thing they did last year, where they were on top of the world and they're crashing back down, and it seems like that's happening again. Philly, are they going to continue to have success? Maybe, but I think there are some teams that are, in terms of my opinion on them, is a little bit dicey, a little shaky. And, Toronto, to me, I think when you look at the teams in front of them, like Buffalo, Philly, Montreal, I just look at Toronto's talent on their roster and say, if they can just get it going a little bit, they can jump these teams.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to say that the playoffs are definitely, I'm not worried about them making the playoffs still right now. I think St. Louis, I'm not thinking that the Leafs are going to be a St. Louis. But I do think that the teams ahead of them right now, I actually still think Pittsburgh, they've actually looked really good despite a lot of injuries.
Right.
I think they've gotten a little lucky because of all the injuries that they've still managed to continue moving along.
No Crosby, and they're still there.
Matt Murray's been a lot better, a lot more consistent. And but I look at Florida. I don't know if Florida continues along this kind of clip. 11-5-5. I mean, they're on pace for like 110 point season. I don't think that actually comes to fruition. Montreal too. I think Montreal, what we've seen is that they can have really nice stretches, but they can also get beaten down, and we'll find out. I mean, a lot of this just comes down to injuries, and the Leafs in reality have been pretty hammered by injuries, but so is Pittsburgh. So sometimes those injuries can get you, and sometimes you can battle through them. And unfortunately, I think that a lot of it has to do with, hey, there's $30+ million into 3 players in the Leafs, and so you can't have the same kind of depth that Pittsburgh can, because their 2 best, or their 2 best or 3 best are making $23 million. So it's you
got a couple extra bucks to go around.
It makes a big difference. It's a whole extra player. That's a whole extra really good player. You better be a darn good player, Mitch Marner.
Oh boy, yeah.
Okay, well, any last final thoughts? Mike Babcock out as the Leafs coach.
Yeah, let me just, I guess maybe just for a fun little closer here, who do you think maybe is the next coach that could get canned?
That's a great question. The next coach that could get canned. Well, it usually doesn't take much other than taking a peek at the bottom of the standings.
There you go.
Well, I think the obvious one might be Bruce Boudreau. New GM up there.
Right.
Ron Hextall takes over.
Once his
8-11-2, you know, they've really, really struggled on the road. One thing about Minnesota to keep in mind: 4-10 on the road, 4-1-2 at home.
Wow.
So they have 14 games away, and they've only played 7 at home. So maybe they get their home games, and they'll probably shoot up the standings a little bit, but that's possible. I also think, you know, if Nashville doesn't get it going here, if Nashville keeps toiling down there, do they make a move? Because they bring in Matt Duchene and they
Laviolette, the third longest tenured coach,
and you know, maybe it's time. To me, I think that team is a little more about the way it's built, less about their coaching. But sometimes you just need a change for change's sake. So
okay, for me, I'm going to say John Hines
of New Jersey.
Yeah,
okay.
Maybe try to figure out a way to keep Taylor Hall there, but
they're at least 5-4-1 in their last 10. Like they're showing some signs of life. But you're right. Like PK Subban hasn't looked good. Like I think it may just be time for a different voice.
Boy, I can't remember who it was last night.
Babcock.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was last night, but undressed PK Subban, and my God, it just looked ugly. All right.
Yeah, could you? Yeah, you know what? Mike Babcock benched PK Subban during those Olympics.
That's true.
So maybe he wouldn't be the best choice. I feel like PK Subban might hold grudges.
Maybe.
There's a chance. Not putting it on you, but you know, he definitely doesn't seem like a guy who doesn't hold grudges.
There you go.
So yeah, that's what I'll say. I also Columbus. I mean, John Tortorella. They're not supposed to be that good, but they have been pretty bad.
Yeah.
They can't score a goal for the life of them. 50 goals so far this year. The next lowest, the LA Kings or New Jersey actually at 51. But yeah, 50 goals in 20 games. That's rough.
Boy,
I need to score some goals. Well, that's our Leafs deep dive. We'll continue. Obviously, like as this situation unfolds, we'll continue to talk about it. And yeah, as I think this is that time of year where if you've got high expectations and your team isn't in it, there's a chance the coach gets fired. And once one goes, there can be a domino. Because then other teams start trying to scoop up your guy, or they go, well, like, who else goes? Babcock's out there. Let's see if we can get him.
Right. Yeah. Last year, no coach is getting fired during the season. Well, I'm sorry, one, but yeah.
And they went to the finals.
Right.
Well, maybe somebody else fires their coach because they don't want last year to happen again.
Right.
They're like, we can't have them be the only team to fire their coach and then go to the finals. Right. There's got to be enough GMs in the league who would hate if the Leafs won the Stanley Cup that somebody's willing to do that.
Oh, boy.
Right? Spite. All right, that's our show. Let us know what you thought at OT Hockey Talk on Twitter and Instagram. We trust that Mike Babcock, thanks for all you did for the Leafs, but too little, too late. And really the players that they drafted probably did more than you did. Whoops. I'll post a picture of me and Mike Babcock the night after my wedding.
That's
on
great.
Our Instagram, because I found him in a hotel. Well, that sounds like I stalked him out. He was in the hotel that we got married in.
He was, yeah. I remember driving by and just seeing him and just freaking out. I'm like, oh my gosh, Mark's going to lose it.
Yep, and then I took a picture with him. And now he's fired. Don't take pictures with me.